My name is Aisha Bello, and I am from Lagos, Nigeria. For years, I had dreamed of visiting New York City, the city of skyscrapers, bright lights, and endless opportunities. After saving up for months, I finally booked my flight. As I sat on the plane, excitement filled my heart. I had watched countless movies about New York, but now I was about to experience it myself. After a long flight, I arrived at John F. Kennedy International Airport. The moment I stepped out, the cold air hit my face. It was winter, and I wasn't used to this kind of cold. I wrapped my scarf tighter and got into a taxi. As we drove into the city, my eyes widened at the towering buildings, the flashing billboards, and the crowds of people moving fast in every direction. It was just as I had imagined, maybe even better. I checked into my hotel in Midtown Manhattan, not far from Times Square. My room was small but cozy, and the city lights shone brightly through the window. Despite my exhaustion, I couldn't stay inside. I stepped out and walked towards Times Square. The energy was electric. Music, laughter, street performers, and giant digital screens flashing advertisements. I was finally in New York. The next morning, I woke up early, eager to explore. My first stop was Central Park. The air was crisp, and the park was covered in a light blanket of snow. Families played, joggers ran past, and street musicians filled the air with soft melodies. I sipped on a hot coffee, enjoying the peaceful contrast to the city's chaos. From there, I took the subway to Lower Manhattan. The subway system was confusing at first, but after a few mistakes, I figured it out. I visited the 9/11 memorial, where I stood silently, feeling the weight of history. The endless waterfall pools and the names of victims carved into the stone made me emotional. It reminded me of how life can change in an instant. By afternoon, I was hungry. I found a small halal food cart and ordered a chicken over rice meal. The vendor, a friendly Egyptian man, smiled as he handed me the plate. The food was spicy, flavorful, and comforting. It reminded me of home. Even though I was thousands of miles away, feeling adventurous, I decided to visit Grand Central Terminal. The high ceilings, golden chandeliers, and busy crowds made it feel like a scene from a movie. I watched as people rushed to catch their trains, each with their own story and destination. After that, I made my way to Fifth Avenue, where luxury stores lined the streets. I walked past Saks, Gucci, and Tiffany & Co., admiring the extravagant window displays. I stepped inside Macy's, one of the world's largest department stores, and bought a small souvenir, a keychain with the Statue of Liberty. In the evening, I went to the top of the Rock at Rockefeller Center. From the 70th floor, I saw the entire city glittering under the night sky. The Empire State Building stood proudly, and I could even see the Brooklyn Bridge in the distance. Standing there, I realized how small I was in this vast city. yet I felt like I belonged. The next day, I decided to be spontaneous. I took the Staten Island ferry, a free ride that passed by the Statue of Liberty. As I admired the iconic statue, a woman next to me smiled and said, "First time in New York?" We started talking, and I learned she was from Brazil, also traveling alone. We decided to explore together. We walked through Wall Street, taking pictures with the famous Charging Bull statue. The streets were filled with business professionals in suits, rushing to their meetings. The city felt like a giant machine, constantly moving. For lunch, we found a cozy pizzeria in Little Italy. The moment I bit into the giant New York-style pizza slice, I knew I had tasted something special. We talked about our lives, our cultures, and our dreams. Traveling alone was fun, but meeting new people made it even better. That evening, I wanted to visit Brooklyn Bridge to see the sunset. I confidently entered the subway, thinking I had mastered the system. But somehow, I ended up on the wrong train, heading deep into Brooklyn instead of Manhattan. Panicked, I got off at a random station. The area looked different, quieter, with fewer tourists. I pulled out my phone to check Google Maps, but my battery was at 2%. A wave of nervousness hit me. I had heard stories about New York being dangerous at night. I approached a kind-looking older man at the station and asked for directions. He smiled and said, "You're a long way from where you need to be." He guided me to the right platform and even waited with me until my train arrived. In that moment, I realized that New York wasn't just about fast-paced life. It was also full of good-hearted people. The next night, something unsettling happened. After dinner, I was walking back to my hotel when I noticed a man following me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but when I crossed the street, he did too. My heart pounded. I remembered what I had read about safety. I quickly entered a 24-hour convenience store and pretended to browse. The man hesitated outside, then eventually walked away. I waited a few more minutes before leaving, my hands still shaking. When I got back to my hotel, I locked my door and took a deep breath. Traveling alone was empowering, but moments like these reminded me to always stay alert. I promised myself to be extra cautious for the rest of my trip, determined not to let fear ruin my experience. I made the next day count. I visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where I admired paintings and sculptures from around the world. Later, I strolled through Chelsea Market, a famous indoor food hall. I tried fresh lobster rolls and they were absolutely delicious. The market was packed with people, from tourists to locals grabbing a quick lunch. That evening, I watched a Broadway show, a dream come true. The performances, music, and lighting were mesmerizing. I sat in the theater, completely lost in the magic of storytelling. With only a day left, I decided to take a bus tour around the city. It was a great way to see the places I had missed, like Harlem and the Bronx. I visited Coney Island a famous amusement park by the beach. I rode the Wonder Wheel and ate a classic New York hot dog. The ocean breeze and the laughter of families made me feel at peace. At sunset, I finally walked across Brooklyn Bridge, watching the city's skyline light up. I had faced challenges in New York, but I had also fallen in love with its energy and diversity. On my last morning, I went back to Times Square one last time. I stood there, watching the crowds, taking in the sounds and lights. This city had tested me, surprised me, and changed me. I grabbed one last bagel and coffee before heading to the airport. As I sat on the plane, I felt a mix of sadness and gratitude. New York had been everything I expected and more. I knew I would return one day, but for now, I was taking home memories that would last a lifetime. Back in Nigeria, my family and friends gathered to hear my stories. I told them about the kind strangers, the delicious food, and even the scary moments. More than anything, I had learned to be independent, to trust my instincts, and to embrace new experiences. New York had given me adventure, lessons, and unforgettable memories. And one day I knew I would walk those streets again.